Good afternoon, folks, and I just thought I'd cut a really quick rough cut video here that talks about using dies and taps. So this is a tap and die set from DeWalt. I think it's about $15 on Amazon. I'm sure you can get them at Lowe's and Home Depot. They're not very expensive. And while most people have used drills and screwdrivers and hammers and stuff, very few people my age or younger have ever used a tap or a die. If you're not aware of what a tap or a die is, a tap is one of these right here. It looks a lot like a drill bit, but it actually has, and I'll show it closer in a minute, it actually is made to cut threads into holes. And a die is the opposite. The die will cut threads into rods. So basically it makes screws out of blank rods. And what's nice about these, and especially about the taps, is that basically you can add a threaded hole to any piece of metal or plastic wherever you need one. The reason this came up now is that I made some video way back when we were doing the 1/4-20 mounts. I made video about creating one of these. So this is a clamp, and I put a 1/4-20 post on it just by threading it and running it inside, and it got cut. I had way too much stuff to put into that video. The video is already way too long, so I cut this. But that video is really useful now because we've got a situation where tapping or having a tapped threaded hole may really make the difference for Yvette. Now let me click over here. All right, so if you look to my over there. If you look over there, it's really hard to know which way to point. I'm sorry, but if you look over here, you'll see that this is what Yvette has asked for. She wants to be able to mount her eye gaze using a 3D printed mount to mount her IX underneath her tablet. Now her tablet's not an iPad like this. It's I believe it's either a Yoga or a Surface Pro or something like that. But she wants to be able to mount it underneath it. And what I said was, wouldn't it be great if there was just a threaded hole right here at the bottom of this mount? So right here at the bottom of the mount. So if there was a threaded hole here, especially if it was one that was a convenient size, you could just mount the eye gaze to the device, to the clamp that holds it in place. And then I realized that I had never published the video showing how to mount that. So I'm going to add that video onto the end of this. Before we do, I want to explain exactly what the idea here is. Let me click here on overhead. So this is the 1/4-20 T-nut 3D printed mount for the IX, right? Except I've taken out the T-nut and I've just put a 1/4-20 bolt in there, machine screw. And if you look on the other side of this, you'll see that's what's sticking out here. What's great about that is that if we had a threaded hole like this one right here that I put in this clamp, so this is the other side of the clamp, has just the hole here, you'll see that we could just literally thread this in, tighten it, and mount it. So if there was a hole like this one in the clamp that she's mounting her tablet into, she could literally just screw the IX into the bottom, which I think is a great solution. It would let her level it left and right. It would keep it pretty much on plane with the mounting surface. And it's really easy. What I learned is that tapping metal and tapping plastic is really easy. I tapped in the video, I'm going to show you in a second, I tapped this hole right here. I'm sorry. I tapped this hole first, and it drilled and threaded just fine. And then I realized that where I put it, it was actually interfering with the spring. So I did it again, and I created a second hole, which had absolutely no problems, and I added this to it. So I'll show that video in a second. But I also, just to make sure I wasn't crazy, tried it with plastic. So I had this spare print here. I went ahead and tapped this plastic, and again, it went great. So I mean, I could very easily take this and just screw it in. Here, I'll just do it for fun. Screw this in here, And because that hole in the plastic is threaded, if I line it up, it's lined up, you'll see that that just screwed straight into that, straight into that printed part. Okay, and it actually holds pretty darn well, given that this is a print with a very low infill, so it's fairly hollow. But you'll see it mounted just fine, certainly well enough for an eye gaze. So the idea here would be to add a threaded hole right here on the bottom of this. Let me see if I don't know if I can make that bigger, but right here at the bottom of that mount, and then just use exactly the same 3D printed mount we already have, pop on the IX, and you'd be done. So I'm going to pop into the video that shows you how to do it. It's a little long, but it's not complicated, and man, it worked great. At the end of it, I even make a comment that says, I kind of feel bad about making this video because this was much easier than I expected. So I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to file it into the rough cut videos. It's not a true guide or anything, but it's a really handy thing to know is how to add a threaded hole or a threaded rod anywhere you want to with a tool that just costs under 20 bucks. All right, we are going to start with a DeWalt tap and die set. This is fractional, which means it's English measurements. In our case, we need 1/4 which is a 1/4 inch with 20 threads per inch. If we look right here, it says that there is a 1/4 tap in here, which is what we're going to use. These are the dies over here. They're for adding, for cutting threads into a piece of metal, into a rod. These are for cutting out threads from an existing hole. So I've done my fair share of YouTubing to know how to do this, but I've never done it myself. Looking a little bit at the instructions, it tells me that for a 1/4 tap, I'm going to use the number 7 drill bit, which is right here, and I'm going to use this to crank it in. I also know just from the little bit of research I've done that I'm going to need some oil. So I have some 3-in-1 oil. There are other oils you can get for this, but that seems to be a decent choice, and I happen to have it nearby, so that was handy. So let me pull out, I'm going to leave everything else in the packages, so let me just pull out the drill bit I need here, and the tap wrench, which we'll use to slowly cut the threads in the hole we're going to make. Sorry if that's loud. And on the other side, we're going to need this, which is the actual tap right here. All right, hopefully that's all with that. We also do have a drill right here. It's just a pretty standard drill. It's actually a brushless drill, which I really like. It goes nice and slow and still has torque, but it's nothing too exotic. So let me set up. Oh, this is the clamp. We're going to put the bolt in, and this is the bolt that we're going to pop through there. So this is a 1/4 bolt, and let me pause this while we set up. All right, so we have clamped the clamp. We've placed the clamp on the workbench here. I don't mind putting a hole or two in the workbench. That's been done before. So I'm going to go ahead and place a hole right here in kind of the center of this using my drill. Again, I apologize for the noise. All right, I have placed the tapping bit into the manual chuck here. Now we should just have to slowly, make sure that's tight. That wasn't tight. you should be able to slowly cut grooves into this aluminum. At this point, it's turning freely. All right, let's see. Going in from the top. Let's see if it'll hold. Look at that. That is just exactly what we wanted. Now we want this coming in from the other side. Wow, that's amazing. All right, so let's make this go in from the other side. I'm going to clamp this open with a pair of vice grips. So now I can get in here to put the screw into the inside. I may have to back up the camera here. And that might be a problem. So we have a small problem in that this particular screw is going to hit that spring right here. And so while this worked and I have exactly the hole I wanted, it may be in a position where I can't actually get the screw without it hitting that spring. So that's just Bill not thinking ahead. The upside is we get to do it again. So let's drill another hole. All right, we're going to put one on the other side. All right, take two. We are going to we're going to put one out here this time so that I can actually get the bolt in it. Okay, that actually drilled nicer anyways. Get this off. And once again, we're going to use the tap. We have to put a little bit of oil, lubricate where the threads are going to go. And then all we do is we take this. Worked remarkably well first time. You put it in the chuck and tighten it down. And then all you do, let me go over here, is you just slowly crank it in and it cuts the threads. And then you feel exactly when you've hit the other side because it suddenly starts turning like a screw and not like you're actually doing any work. So right now it's turning like a screw. Go ahead and crank it all the way down. I think that might actually get some of those shavings to smooth down at the end there. And then we'll just pull this out. So that's out. Let's try the screw here. Goes in like a charm. It's right there. We've added a threaded hole for the. It holds great. So let's try it from the inside. I don't know if you can see this from the inside. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this from the inside effectively with the camera. But you can see I'm just threading it in. All the way down. I'll grab a pair of adjustable wrenches. Just crank it down. I almost feel guilty making the video because this just doesn't seem like it's that big a deal. But this now has a 1/4 threaded bolt on it, so I can clamp it anywhere and pop on anything that takes a 1/4 threaded bolt. So that can include a camera or anything like that. About the only problem I see with it is that this particular bolt is probably longer than I would like. I'd probably like it about half that length. Obviously, I can just go buy a shorter bolt. That doesn't change the tapping part of this. It's holding great. I could also just get a hacksaw or a Dremel and cut this off. But I love this. I think this is perfect. I think it is just exactly what I needed. And I'm glad I recorded it. I hope you guys get something out of this. Again, this is the tool you need right here. It is a basic tap from DeWalt, I believe. And just pops in here, cranks down to just like the chuck on a drill, holds it in place, and you slowly turn it by hand to carve out the threads in a piece of metal. So thank you for watching.